Welcome to the Sacred Child Summit. I'm your host, Kathleen Sherrick, and I'm pleased to welcome today Pam Montgomery. Pam is an herbalist, author, and international teacher, a plant spirit healing practitioner who has passionately embraced her role as a spokesperson for the green beings. She's been investigating plants and their intelligent spiritual nature for over 3 decades. She's the author of 2 books, one of which is the highly acclaimed Plant Spirit Healing, a guide to working with plant consciousness. She teaches internationally and virtually on plant spirit healing, spiritual ecology, and co-creative partnership with nature. She's a founding member of United Plant Savers, and more recently, the Organization of Nature Evolutionaries, or ONE. Her latest passion is to engage ceremoniously in full symbiosis with the plant-human matrix, where the elder common plants initiate and guide us into being truly human. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Very nice to have you. What an interesting conversation I'm looking forward to here. What is co-creative partnership with nature? What is it, Pam?
Well, it's just kind of like the words, co-creative. So together we create, and it's really about, well, we are very symbiotically related to plants. I mean, more so than anything else. I mean, some people might argue that, we're descended from animals, from apes or whatever. But the truth is it's plants that we're mostly related to. And so we our very breath is because of plants. Our tissue, we don't make tissue from sunlight. Plants do that. And then we eat the plants or eat an animal that ate a plant, and then we make our own tissue. So the point is, and it's not just physically that we're very related, we're very related mentally. There's a whole hypothesis now in the scientific realm that our what they would call higher mind actually evolved from plants when they 1.8 billion years ago, when they started to make decisions about reproduction and kind of carrying on their species. And there's this hypothesis now that we actually evolved from that, so that our mental capacities came from plants, our emotional lives. There's the whole again, another one about, it's called biophilia, which is basically means the love of nature, but how we are really, so we're just so symbiotically related to plants, which when I talk about nature, I include plants because plants and trees and sea vegetables are 99% of all living organisms on this planet. So, and they've been here for literally billions of years. And so it means that they're successful. They've figured out how to be on this planet in a sustainable way, in a way that they just continue on. So bringing it back to your question about co-creative partnership is like, it's actually easy for us to be in relationship, which evolves as you bring it into conscious awareness, which evolves into a partnership. And actually, I would say my experience has been that these plants can become your beloveds. I mean, oh, so basically, co-creative partnership is just that it's actually easy to be in a partnership or grow into a partnership with plants because we're so closely related. And it's just a matter of, just kind of like switching it, switching your head around a little bit and saying, oh, I actually do remember how to communicate with plants. Now, I'm going to extend that also to the rest of nature, because this incredible planet that we live upon, we've got the water, we've got the air, we've got the fire, we've got all the elements, we've got the earth, and we are part of it. We're not separate from nature. We're a part of nature. And what I'm really working towards in my work is to help people wake up and remember that we're here on this planet to be good stewards. That's our role, is to be good stewards on this planet. And I'm going to emphasize the word good because we can see how we've kind of made a little bit of a mess too, by our consume. So it's really about shifting how we view nature and realizing that nature's our kin, and nature's our kin, and to view it that way instead of as a commodity to be used and usually thus abused. So co-creative partnership is just that, together, and one is not greater than the other. We have our part that we play within nature, as does, the soil has a part to play, and the water has a part to play, and the air has a part to play, and we all have our part here. And that together we can create a world here worth living on, and one that we've been able to dream it. We've been able to imagine, this beautiful, as Joni Mitchell said way back when, we got to get ourselves back to the garden, and that's what it's about right now. Is we're in a pretty critical place on the planet right now, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden. The way we do that is shift our relationship with nature into a co-creative partnership. I could say a ton more about that, but you get the gist.
I'm interested, and I think our audience would be interested in knowing more as well. And so there are some things that you may already have lived and breathed and worked with and played with for decades now, but that may be kind of new concepts for the rest of us. But for example, when you were mentioning that plants kind of led us, and plants made decisions. So are you saying that plants have consciousness?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Help us understand this.
Well, like I said, they've been around for a very long time, so they have the long view, it's like, and plants are completely responsible for the very oxygen-rich atmosphere that we live in, that makes life live basically on this planet. And it's because of plants, strictly because of plants. That's where the oxygen comes from. It doesn't come from any place else. So, there's so many ways we could go here. They're conscious aware. My humble understanding about consciousness is that what makes something conscious is when it's aware of itself, when you become aware of yourself. And plants they're actually, okay, being a plant person, I'm going to say some things that people are going to go, what? But I would say plants are more conscious than we are, because they're just being themselves. They're not putting on facades to be somebody else, or they're not sitting here talking to you in their head, balancing their checkbook. They're not doing that kind of stuff. We do that kind of stuff. So I feel like we get kind of all muddled up in kind of our ego and our head and all of that. And plants and trees they're just being themselves. They're just being like treeness, and they do things like, when the atmosphere starting to get a little imbalanced with too much carbon dioxide, for eons, they have been adjusting their uptake of carbon dioxide depending on what's going on the planet. And right now, I know things are getting a little critical right now because we're putting so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, but they're like jumping it up a few notches to continue to create homeostasis on the planet. Now, if that's not consciousness, what is? I mean,
Now,
and so it's on, like if you wanted to look at the science, it's all there in the science. But then when you start moving into personal relationship with these plants and trees, and like I'm in London and I'm trying to get home, but the volcano went off, and this was years ago when and I couldn't get a plane home, and so I'm standing on a street corner in London, and a person told me to go out and catch the red bus in order to go to the train that would take me to the boat that would take me to Ireland, where my friends live, where I could stay until who knows when I get an airplane. And I stand on that street corner, and she says, catch the red bus, and all the buses are red. And so I'm like, I have no clue what to do. And I stand there, and I'm like, white pine is like tree is one of my like all-time loves and very close allies. And I stand there and I was like, okay, and it's tower of strength. That's what it is for me. And so I throw my shoulders back and stand straight. And I'm like, okay, White Pine, I need your help, and I need it now. I need to go to Ireland, and I don't know how to get there. And I need your help now. And up, coming walking down the street, comes this lovely businessman, suit, tie, of Indian descent, from India, darker skinned, Indian descent, comes walking up to me, sees the big tears rolling down my face, and says to me, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I need to go to Ireland. And he says, okay, you got to take this bus and do that. I said, no, wait. I gotta write it down. And he said, oh, I'll take you. And I'm like, and that little voice goes, don't go off with a stranger, except that's my mother's voice, not my voice. And so I just said, give me a second. I turn, I'm like, okay, heart. I go to my heart, and I'm like, should I go or not? And so I wait for the ping or the thud, and it goes ping, and I'm like, okay, I can go with him. So he takes me on the bus, he takes me to the train, says, get on. Okay, and don't forget, as he helped me buy my ticket, don't forget, you got to change trains and in this place, and you'll be fine. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And I was like, wait, what's your name? He said, Hans. And I went, an English businessman of Indian descent named Hans. Who was that anyway? Was that an angel? Was that White Pine just showing up like an Indian businessman to get me where I needed to go? So the point being here of this story is that I asked White Pine to help me, and it was immediate. Now, some might say, oh, it was a coincidence. Sorry, I don't believe in coincidences, but I just feel like when you move into a partnership, really, and here's the thing about the plants and the trees, they want us to succeed. They're not out to get us. We're like their little brothers and sisters who need a little help maturing, because we're not really as mature as we could be. So anyway,
so what you're saying is that the relationship can extend beyond you standing in front of a tree. It goes with you wherever you are once you have relationship, and it could be something that you use as a touchstone with whatever you're encountering. And you've had some magical experiences, it sounds
yes.
like, with that.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, Pam, it seems to me that I've heard about research of trees communicating in a forest, either through their root system or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the mycelium. Well, you know who's doing amazing work around that right now is Suzanne Samard. She's up in BC, up in British Columbia, and she just released a book called Song of the Trees, maybe. I might not be quite correct on the title of that, but yes. So basically, it's like, oh, it's the mother tree. She said the song of the mother tree or something like that. Anyway, she has identified where she goes into a forest area, and that's what her work has been all this time, is her research. And she finds the mother tree, and the mother tree, through its roots, but also through the mycelium, all the little network of like little rootlets and everything underneath the soil, which, the mushrooms are connected with the mycelium as well. Anyway, it's like a network. It's like the internet. It's like the internet of the globe. And so this mother tree, like, takes care of the baby trees around. It's like, what? It's amazing. It's just amazing. So yes, they're communicating with each other, and they're communicating with you. So they're actually super good communicators, super good communicators.
And this kind of communication has actually been measured. It's
Oh,
been
yeah.
measured through, is it vibration research or vibrational resonance research?
Well, so there's a group of folks in Damanhur in Italy, and they had created back in the early 70s. No, wait. When did the machine happen? They actually began their community. The UN has called them the Eco Society of the Future. This is an amazing place in Italy, and they created a device called Music of the Plants. And basically, you hook it up, you have an electrode that goes to the leaves, and then you have a probe that goes to the roots, and it measures the electrical resistance between the leaves and the roots. But basically, it has like 120 instruments in it. You can choose the instrument. Basically, you hook it up, and the plant or tree sings to you. I mean, it plays music, and um, and so you can hear the vibratory resonance of the plant through this device. And when I first, encountered it, I was like, oh, come on, machines, we don't need that. And then I was like, well, actually, it's probably really handy for the masses to get it, that oh, this plant's alive. It has a vibratory resonance. And, and when you're working with the music of the plants, if somebody else walks in the room, it changes. If you're indoors and the sunlight comes through the window and shines on the plant, it changes. If an animal comes into the room, it'll change. Some really funky energy will make them stop. It's kind of amazing that you're like, what?
So what you're saying is the energy that is emitted comes out in terms of a vibration that has a tune or has sound
Yes.
to it.
Yes. So you're like hooking it up to this device that has a musical instrument that it kind of uses that as the vehicle. But oh yeah, the tones go up and down. And what I've done in my classes, when people come and when we hook up the music of the plants, all the different students go up and be with the plant, and it's amazing how it changes. And it's just kind of so, and they're doing all kinds of research with it, where taking it into hospitals, and people are healing quicker, and bringing it into schools, and kids are learning better. And so there's all this research going on with it right now, and it's actually quite phenomenal. Boy, it's a heart opener, I'll tell you. I was at a big conference, and there were a lot of people, and I hooked it up in the front of the room, and people in the back couldn't quite really see what I was doing. And I started playing the machine, and the and it's this woman said, "What is that sound?" She was way in the back. She said, "What is that sound?" I said, "Well, that's the plant, singing." And she just started weeping. I'm talking weeping. She was like, her heart just went, it just broke her heart wide open. And it was just so touching. And when people really get it, that this is possible, that you can hear a plant sing, and when you work with it for a while, you start to see the nuances and see, oh, what does a high note mean? Oh, what does a low note mean? Oh, what does it mean when, so you start to see oh, when I do this, this happens.
It's like you're decoding the language through
right.
the song and through the sounds that they're emitting. And if I think then of walking in a forest, you're walking amidst a symphony.
You are.
That is so beautiful to even think about.
Yes. And I'm so glad you said that, because, our range of hearing is the same with sight. We have a kind of narrow band that we see within and that we hear within, but it doesn't mean there's not more sound on the ends of the spectrum. And so yeah, when you're walking in the forest or anywhere in nature where there's plants, you're being bathed, you're being bathed in their resonance all the time. Now, when you go, oh, oh, this lovely vibration. Oh, yeah. When you become aware of it and you acknowledge it, and then you bring yours into the mix, and then you've got this, you start having this two-way street begins to happen. And this amazing communication happens, um, which again, the plant communication, that's a huge, big, long topic that we could talk for days about that. But yeah, it's absolutely possible to be in communication with plants. And
This is
I'm going to extend that to all of nature, really.
and four, if we start at the beginning of life, preconception to age 6 is what the summit is all about. And so if we start with, for example, a mother who may be pregnant. So we have a fetus in utero, and a mother is walking through the forest, that the mindfulness around walking through a symphony sounds like such a beautiful way to begin to welcome a child into the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love, I'm always like wanting to do the research. I would love to see like, I don't, tracking like what were women's, what, when they were pregnant, when in utero, what did they do? Did they sit in front of a computer and still work in front of a computer all day long? Or did they make sure they went out into the woods or into their gardens and spend, a significant amount of time each day there? I would love to see what the children are like. What are the differences, And then there's the whole oxytocin piece here too, for like with the mother-child bonding thing. Um, Oxytocin is one of those hormones that we're kind of hardwired with as a way to connect. It's the bonding hormone, and it restores everything back to the balance point. It's about restoration. And um so this oxytocin, you can have that experience with the natural world as well.
And it sounds like that would just really, really more embolden and enable the oxytocin with the uterus, with the fetus in the uterus as well.
Yes. So like I call it the aha moments, or the moments that take your breath away. And like that's when the oxytocin's being released, when a beautiful sunset, or a beautiful ocean or lake or stream or whatever, or lovely gardens or soil or forest or whatever, and you just go, oh, like oxytocin gets released, bonding can happen. It means that you are connected. When that oxytocin, it flows through the bloodstream and then the cell receptors uptake it, that's your moment where you're like, there's no difference between you and nature. It's the same way it is with a child. When you got that oxytocin going with a child at birth, which is kind of like your bonding moment, is so incredible. And of course, it's, as it's very different for a child who's born in a very oxytocic environment where there's a lot of bonding between mother and child, and then one that's not. It's a very different experience. It's the same with nature. So if you can have oxytocic moments in nature, it's gonna bring everything back to a restoration place, and you're gonna be connected. You're gonna feel like, oh, I belong here. Oh, I belong to this. I belong to this great nature. Oh, this child belongs to me, or I belong to it. It's that belonging thing, which is what we so desperately need right now, to feel like we belong. And this beautiful planet is our home.
It's such a beautiful way to explain it here, that we have outside our door tools ready to work with us, tools ready to support us. And by tools, I simply mean that as a symbol for, we've got some consciousness out there that can support us. So we're really not alone. What about families that may live in the city or may not be living, very close to nature? Are there things that they can do, Pam, that can help this co-creative nature relationship?
Yes, of course. Well, I mean, the beauty of plants anyway is that they operate outside of time and space. And so that, as we were the story that I told about white pine wasn't sitting there on the street corner. No, white pine was living inside me because I have had worked to create that kind of relationship, and so I could call upon it. So this is something that kids are amazing because they're like they're already there, in so many ways. It's the parents they have to kind of bring along, and but all it takes is like I mean, they can go out, dandelions going to come up out of the crack of the city sidewalk, You're always going to have dandelions somewhere, which is a very powerful plant. And these little children, all it takes is like one experience where they just really like, oh yeah, and that's tactile and all that, smelling the plants or maybe eating a dandelion leaf or something like that. And then they don't forget, they don't forget these experiences, and it's like it lives inside them, and they go back there, and so they can go back to that plant even when it's not in physical presence. But then, of course, I mean, you can bring things into your environment. You can bring house plants into your environment. Maybe you've got a balcony that you've got plants on, or maybe you go to the park. But pretty much with kids and family, it's just when they can be tactile and walking barefoot. So it's possible in a city. It's not maybe as quite as accessible, but plants are everywhere. Pretty much trees are everywhere. Nowadays, they're starting to make those buildings that are beautiful buildings where like every single story of the building has like a garden. So, yeah. And then when um, I like to share with, especially with kids, they seem to like this a lot. Everybody likes this, is sit spots. So spots in nature. And again, if you're in a city, you go to the park, you get out of the city, or you go to the lake, or you go off maybe a little bit. So, but then you have a sit spot. And a sit spot is a spot where you just go, you're attracted to it, and it's like, oh, I like this spot. And you just sit and you just quietly observe everything that's going on around you. So, like, what are the insects that are coming in? What are the bird calls? What kind of wind is happening? What's the sun doing or not? And you just pay. What are the smells? What are the smells that you're smelling? And when you can bring in, especially with kids, when you can bring it in on that level, I'm going to say tactile again, that tactile level, it goes in and they don't forget. So,
Yeah, and
anyway.
I will say that as a Montessori directress in my life myself, that I confirm exactly what you're saying, that children resonate
Yeah.
with being outside, and there's not a block for them. If we can have the foresight to present the experience, to open to it, to present to it, they pretty much know what to do, and they absorb readily, and they don't forget. It becomes very precious to them.
Yes.
And one of the things that you say, Pam, is that you call planting a garden a holy act.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
explain that? Because it also occurs to me that's something you could do in the city with a herbal garden,
Yes.
but also anywhere. So what do
Well,
you mean by this?
yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the examples I wanted to give for something simple that kids can do is plant their own little gardens. And it doesn't have to be like acres, acres and acres. All it has to be is a planter box, a planter box on a city balcony. And kids, you take this little tiny seed and you put it in this soil and then you water it and you watch it grow, and it's like a miracle. It's like, and I'm a gardener for, oh gosh, how many years now? If I tell you, then you're going to really say, oh, she's getting old. I've been a gardener for 50 years, and I still plant that seed and go, wow, that's a miracle. How'd that happen? I mean, I still am in awe and wonderment of the simple act of planting a seed. And it's so powerful. And so that is a big thing for kids, is to be able to just plant a little, either a community garden or a little planter box, or maybe their parents like to garden and they help them garden. It's so important to like get those kids out there and have them helping them do that. And another thing that I, especially these days, since we really need to be conscious of tree planting and all that kind of stuff, is that encouraging kids to plant trees as a way of like honoring a relative, maybe. So like the Arbor Day Foundation, the tree folks, that's one of the things that they do. And so I feel like I'm trying to get away from like going and buying some, excuse me, but plastic thing from China to give to somebody, and instead have a child plant a tree and say like in their grandmother's honor for her birthday, for example. So the kid is, actually doing something with their hands. That's another kind of key ingredient with kids. They like to do stuff, and plant a tree and then make a little card to Grammy or whatever and say, Grammy, I planted you a tree for your birthday. And that's their present to me. And the kids just love doing that. And the Grammy is like, oh my gosh, this is the best present ever. So things like that are just really powerful and potent for kids and
Some
their
of
parents.
some of the things that you teach and have workshops and seminars around also include what might be the spirits of the plants. Now, would those be things that what we might call fairies or elves or gnomes or elemental life, something like that? Or what do you refer to as the spirit of the
Yeah, well,
plants?
the spirit of the plant to me is the vital principle. When I speak of that word, the vital principle held to give life. That's my definition of spirit. So, so it's really that vital essence of the plant. So it's different than elementals and fairies. Those are other nature spirit beings. They're in their own category.
I see.
But
Okay,
the
thank you
spirit
for
of the
the
plant
clarity.
is really like the essence of the plant. And so yeah, so connect, I mean, which is also part of its consciousness, its conscious awareness is this spirit aspect. And so you can develop a relationship with, and here's the other thing is that plants um in evolution have evolved prior to their animal counterparts. Always. This is the way it's been. So, like angiosperms, which are flowering plants that have internal reproductive organs, evolved before mammals, which is their animal counterpart, because mammals needed something to eat. And so angiosperms evolved first. So in our evolution now, as I watch plants and I kind of watch what's going on, I'm like, okay, where's our evolution now? And I feel like our evolution is of a spiritual nature. It's that we've evolved pretty far physically, and but spiritually, and when I say that, I'm like evolving to the point where we stop destroying the planet. I mean, it's pretty simple, actually. I mean, we have a little ways to go yet, and yet the plant, what I see. So back in the maybe 50s, for sure 60s, the big thing was psychotropic plants or psychedelic plants or cannabis, mind altering. And then it goes into things like flower essences, which have no chemical constituents whatsoever. Then it's strictly the vibratory essence of the flower. And then it's plant spirit healing, which is what I'm working with. But what I'm seeing is that there's been this huge explosion in interest in working with the plants in this way. And what I see is like, oh, it's the plants stepping up to the plate to guide us in our evolution. And our evolution is of a spiritual nature. So, of course, the aspect of the plant that's going to open those doors of perception and open you to the energetics of it all and to the vibratory resonance and all of that. Of course, that's what's going on right now. So I feel like if we pay attention to these plants, then we can be guided in our spiritual evolution, because that's what they're doing right now. They're preceding us in the evolution. And hopefully it's in time. I think so. I'm a pretty optimistic person, actually.
Well, you've talked that they've been around for eons, and
Yeah.
so perhaps at this point we trust them to continue to guide us as long as we're listening, I think is what you're saying, right? As long as we're aware.
Yeah. Yeah. Paying attention. It's just paying attention, you
Well,
know?
and the whole aspect that you mentioned there of wonderment, to me, this is something that children
Yes.
naturally can be if we don't unintentionally step in the way of this natural looking at the world with wonder. And that nature is then a playground.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
playground for children. And if we, again, learn from the plants, as well as so the curiosity about plants that you're guiding us in here today, and also curious about our own children and watching them be curious with the plants, it
Yeah.
seems that we can learn more about ourselves, maybe reconnect to things
Yeah.
that we have experienced before that we hold dear with
Yeah.
plants and nature, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
There are some people that find nature daunting, Pam. You know, nature is daunting because they're not familiar. They didn't grow up around it, or it might be something a little scary or unusual. What suggestions might you have for someone who's not as comfortable
Right.
in
Yeah.
in nature?
Well, you're right, and that is a big one, and even with children too, children who don't have as much exposure to the natural world, and they're exercising their thumbs instead, and so it's like that. You're absolutely right, and then there's things that come up where there's fear. There's some fear of nature too, like, oh my gosh, I can't take a walk in the woods because I'll get Lyme disease, for example. So that's one of the big fears is that, and ticks are a reality. It's true. My experience has been is that everything in nature is here for a reason. It's like, you know, I'm here as an herbalist, you're here as a lovely, helping with parenting and all that kind of stuff. And, everybody is here, brings their gifts, inherent gifts to this planet. And what we really need to be doing is sharing those gifts. And so it's the same with all aspects of nature too. Everything is here for a reason. And the ticks are not out to get us. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is there's an imbalance in the predator-prey relationship. That's what's happening. And so we just have to be aware of that. But back to your question. So what I encourage folks to do is to look for the gift. What is the gift? So poison ivy, poisonous plants, that's a real good example of like, oh gosh, poison ivy, I can't get near that. And yet I had a very wonderful teaching about poison ivy years ago because I was extremely allergic as a kid. I was the calamine lotion queen back as a kid. I was always pink. And
That means
people probably don't remember.
you were rolling around in the grass and enjoying all those nature spirits
Yeah.
from the very
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I needed to change, as I got to be an adult and got into the poison ivy and everything. I was like, I need to change this relationship with poison ivy. It's not the enemy, and I need to shift my. So I went through a whole process of doing that, and realized that the gift that poison ivy was sharing with us is it's a great protector plant. It protects areas on the planet that have been, either abused or real lot of chemicals or heavy agriculturalized land or something like that. So it actually is really serving an amazing purpose. And once I got that and started working with it with the gifts that it brings, instead of like, oh my God, I'm going to get this horrible reaction, everything changed. Everything changed. So it's really important for us to look for what the gifts are in all of it, instead of that nature's the enemy or nature's out to get us or something like that. It's the opposite. Nature gives us our life. And if it wasn't for this great nature, we wouldn't be here. So I would say just take it slowly and simply, keep it simple, breathing, walking barefoot, But I think walking barefoot is one of the greatest ways to get comfortable with nature. And, the pores on the bottom of our feet are some of the largest in our whole body. And when you're walking across these plants, and you can just take a little 5 foot area, and probably in your yard, I probably there's at least 10 to 20 different plants in this little tiny area, many of them medicinal. And so you're walking across these plants, so you're getting these little nano nutrients coming up through the bottom of your feet. So not only does it feel good to walk on soft earth or soft grass, or even walking through the woods barefoot. I mean, not only is it great and it totally connects you, grounds you right down to the earth, but you're also receiving little bits of nutrient and medicine, really medicine. Some of the medicine plants are there too. So,
Well, what some of the things that you have explained is that if we were to be in nature or take a walk or be in a forest, that if we were to, number one, open and consider that these plants are providing a service, to consider that they're singing. Oh, there's so much here, Pam. Okay, to consider gratitude, being grateful for them, that gratitude can switch everything in terms of how we interact with nature and with plants. And then it occurs to me, the openness is also, am I willing to receive this?
yeah.
And when you speak of barefoot, walking barefoot, it's a very vulnerable thing. It can be vulnerable for people who are who might be more comfortable with shoes on all the time. And so to open to that vulnerability in nature and with plants seemed to be such a beautiful entry point. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Are there any last things that you would like to share with our audience in terms of insights or?
Well, I love that you just now mentioned kind of like that opening place, and opening your heart and gratitude, and how when we're just in gratitude, that's like that positive impulse to the heart, which puts our hearts in coherence, which then there's a whole chain of events that happens that can lead to the release of oxytocin. But just gratitude. I mean, we all can be grateful for something. The food on our table, or the beautiful child that we have, or the lovely water course that we're sitting beside, or whatever. So there's always something, but it opens the heart. And that, I think, is another key ingredient here, is that our hearts easily, when we're open and willing to receive, our hearts easily can connect to the heart of the earth, to the heart of nature. It's how it's the design. It's how we're designed. This is not like we're trying to figure something out or do something new. This is the way it's been for millennia on this planet with humans. And it's only been a short, like 100, maybe 200 years that we kind of forgot. And it's not that it's not here, we just forgot. And so now we're going to wake up, we're going to remember, oh, that's right, I actually am a part of nature. Oh, I actually do know how to communicate. Oh, I actually do know how to connect. And oh, what a great, wonderful healing it is when I do that. And nourishing. So it's not that we don't know how to do this. We do. And kids already do. They're like, they got it. They got it.
So if our children are saying something like, well, this plant makes me feel better, or this plant is saying something to me, we shouldn't necessarily dismiss it, because there may be other connections that they innately have that we perhaps had before and may have lost, or are not as aware of as they may be right now.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
Well, Pam, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for this whole awakening to the co-creative relationship that we can have with nature, that benefits babies in the womb, benefits us as we're growing, benefits young children. And when they have that touchstone themselves as they grow, as you have explained, that the non-locality of relationships with plants we can take anywhere.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so
Absolutely.
much. And I understand you have a free gift for our audience. Would you like to introduce
Yes,
that?
I do. I do. Yes. It's a green breath, which it's just a simple green breath. And because, we talked about like, well, where can people start? Where can they begin? And this is something that we have that is always here is our breath. And when we bring it into conscious awareness of where our breath comes from, that really moves our relationship with the natural world forward. And so the free gift is a green breath meditation I explain it step by step how to go about it, and then do a little audio of me doing the green breath. And so kids and their family and their friends can do green breaths together. And it's a great thing, and it's a great way to start your day. So anyway, that's the free gift, is a green breath meditation, and to offer to everyone. And yeah, I'm just happy to do that.
Thank you, Pam. And for this free gift is available, and next to in the links that accompany this video. And in order, if you're looking to connect with Pam, also her information accompanies this video. So Pam, thank you so much for the conversation today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.